Hello, this is Mandy Halverson, and I am going to be sharing with you lessons that I have learned from my interview with a professional. Instead of giving you my professional's name, I've chosen to share this picture of a candle burning at both ends. I've chosen to keep his identity private because I think he shared a lot of really negative aspects of his job that might make him vulnerable. So I've decided to keep his identity private. He works in three different jobs within the mental health field in order to be able to provide for his family. But the position that he spoke to me most about was Southern Nevada adult mental health. And we, of course, were not able to meet with him at this location. He works there during the week and comes to into Utah County over the weekend and works there. The purpose of this organization, Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health, is to give access to care, to counseling services to those who need it and who would not be able to access that help on their own because of the cost. So the population you're really serving are people who have an economic need. Interestingly, also about the population that he serves, he is the mental health counselor, but half of the patients that he sees are actually for substance abuse. Half of the patients he sees struggle with substance abuse. And the way the state of Nevada has chosen to approach mental health care and substance abuse is just to try to do it more holistically, or in other words, to have these few healthcare professionals to be able to serve all of this population. They seem to be quite overwhelmed. There are 3,000 clients that they serve, and that's 2.5 therapists that provide that service, 2 marriage and family therapists, and actually 1 psychologist that works part-time. 14 years ago, they had a much larger budget in order to meet these needs, and now their budget's a fourth of what it used to be. A lot of the frustration that he expressed was how difficult it is to be in a state that does not have a cohesive plan for how they want to help with mental health issues among their population, and that if they do have a plan, it frequently will change according to the political climate of the time. So there are times when there is enough political will to build a building, but the purpose of that building might change several times while it's even being built or after it is built, because there is not a very cohesive plan for how to help with the issues of mental health and substance abuse. Because there has been, the state has pulled back from being able to provide most of that care. In the community that he's lived, he's seen many clinics that he referred to as here today and gone tomorrow clinics that try to step up and provide some of that care, private startups that are trying to help with recovery. And he's noticed that they very frequently go out of business. And he attributes this to how difficult it is to get reimbursement from Medicaid, and the difficulties in running in that type of institution. I asked him if he felt like his training, his education prepared him for what he would be doing. I was interested that he was a marriage and family therapist and that he was spending a bulk of his time with substance abuse treatment. And he said he absolutely did not feel prepared from his training. He had wondered several times if he should go back to school and get extra certification, but he'd wondered if he'd learned most of it just in on-the-job training. So if he could do it over again, he said that he would become a licensed clinical social worker, because it opened more doors for him, and it may give him a little bit more of that training that he would need in order to be able to work on the jobs that he was doing. Speaking with him really helped me to appreciate the training that I am getting, that it is so relevant to the needs of the communities that we will be serving. And the education that we're getting is so top notch. One of the best parts of the conversation for me was talking to this particular therapist about how to avoid burnout. Interestingly, a lot of what made him feel burned out wasn't the heavy stories that his clients were telling him, though that was taxing. It also, in a strange way, was rejuvenating because he was able to provide something very meaningful. What really was difficult for him and draining and made him feel burnout was when he didn't feel supported by his employer, which is really the state. And the question that he asked was, does your employer really have your back? In the best of ways, not like gonna stab you in the back, but will they protect you? And he shared a story of a colleague of his who was on probation and reprimanded because she didn't care for one of her clients fully and what they felt like was abandonment. But the story that he shared with us was that she was not aggressive enough with that client after her client didn't come back, that she should have written her letters and kept pursuing her. This was surprising to me in light of how large their caseload is, 3,000 people among 2.5 mental health professionals. And he was also troubled by that. And he felt like you could easily be reprimanded and become the scapegoat for the decisions that they have made to try to do more on less. And what doing more on less really means is we're going to pay less and have less professionals, but we expect you somehow to be able to do it all and do more. That's really overwhelming, and I don't think he's found a good solution to that problem except for to look for a different job. But another thing that he talked about that he had to learn early on in his career to avoid burnout was leaving work at work. And this became especially challenging when he had a client that had very challenging problems and complicated issues that they were dealing with. But he learned that when those thoughts came into him about those clients, came into his mind, that he would put those thoughts out of his mind and he would tell himself that he would deal with those when he was back in the office, but that while he was home, he was going to spend time with his family. And he felt that that really preserved him, that he was able eventually to have that be his habit, that he would leave work at work, and that he was able to provide better health care to his clients because of that. Other things that he did to avoid burnout were just keeping personal hobbies. His hobby happened to be making water fountains. He also loved to spend time with his family, and he preferred to do that in nature. Really common things that seem to be alleviate pressure for all of us. Well, I guess not the making water fountains, but the final piece of advice that he shared was quite interesting. He said that one of the best ways that he cared for himself and preserved himself was by not turning to substance abuse, as he had seen many of his colleagues do, probably because they were carrying such a heavy load and trying to help in so many difficult situations that it is comforting to some people to be able to have a release and to be able to find a getaway from those pressures through using substances. But he always found it hard to understand why people would do that when they had seen firsthand all of the damage that substance abuse causes. So he had developed a philosophy of being able to meet life on its terms and be able to accept the highs and the lows of life, and through really simple things find pleasure in life. Because this therapist shared with me so many negative aspects of his job, I really wanted to end the interview by connecting with the why. Was he able to have those experiences in his profession where he was able to provide care for an individual and that really satisfied the reasons that he originally chose to come into this field? And he answered immediately that he always has those types of experiences. I asked him if he'd be willing to share one, and he shared the story of one of his clients. And the payoff in that client was being able to see her go from a difficult state to a healthy state. And this client was actually someone that he was able to counsel over years, 8 years. She had continual trauma and many difficult things happened to her along the way. She was actually someone who had been sexually abused for quite a while as she was growing up by her father and her father's friends. And then when she finally turned 18, her family asked her to care for her grandmother. And she was placed solely in that position, which wasn't appropriate, but she didn't understand that at the time. And as she cared for her grandma and heard her crying in the other room constantly because of the immense pain that her grandmother was in, um, this granddaughter who was leaving a life of trauma and leaving her childhood home was just traumatized by that suffering of that grandma until the point where she came and she found a gun and was pointing it toward her grandmother and was tempted to shoot her and put her out of her misery, and she didn't pull the trigger. But it was at this point of the interview that the therapist that I interviewed became undone. And it sounded like a cough at first, but eventually he was just crying as he recalled the terrible plight of his patient. And he felt that pain again as he remembered her. And the therapist that we interviewed, he was a reserved, dignified, quiet type of personality. So for him to show this emotion and to be vulnerable in this way was moving. And we were able to end the interview really just with gratitude that he was able to help that client, that he was able to be with her during that very difficult life that she was given. And in some small way, he could help to provide that healing that she would need. And we marveled that he could be paid to be able to have that job. And so that is like how I would like to end the things that I have learned in my interview with a professional, that I think it is an honor to be learning, to becoming an expert in things that can change the lives of human beings, and that we can be honored to walk with people in the most difficult times of their lives and help to be a place and a source of healing for these people, to people who frequently have been dealt the worst cards in life and been given the most raw deal. We can help be a part of the good side of their story. And I think that is an honor.